Hello, my name is Sondra Peron, Associate Professor at Springfield Technical Community College and Gallery Coordinator of the Amy H. Carberry Fine Arts Gallery located in Building 28. The Carberry Gallery at STCC strives to foster intellectual engagement and dialogue beyond the traditional classroom by breaking preconceived notions of a gallery as an exclusive space. One function of the gallery is to share who artists are and what they create in order to inspire students to pursue their creative endeavors and career goals. Fine arts courses are open to everyone here at STCC, and the importance of visual literacy to every student's overall educational experience cannot be understated, no matter their major. I originally conceived of these virtual Carberry Conversation interviews in response to the pandemic, and with each interview covering a wide variety of topics, including origin stories, the impact of current events on the artistic process, the function of art and photography during times of crisis. I continue to offer this virtual format since we reach a much wider audience across the globe, and while creating an archive of these conversations available on YouTube as a resource for the STCC community to enjoy into the future. Today, I have a very special guest for this Carberry Conversations interview as we celebrate International Education Week here at the college. Kimani Worghs is a former student and an STCC grad. Born in England, Kimani boasts a rich heritage from Ghana, Jamaica, and England. From England, he moved to California and Georgia before settling in Springfield, Massachusetts, where he attended Commerce High School. At STCC, Kimani studied business and digital photography and worked as a bank teller until just this past summer. Besides being a photographer, Kimani is an art director, a stylist, an entrepreneur, a fashion designer, a model, and so much more. Welcome, Kimani, to Carberry Conversations.
Thank you, Sondra.
I am so excited to have this opportunity to talk to you. And we probably should start by saying, full disclosure, I first met you when you were in my Art 150 Photo 1 darkroom photography course back in the spring of 2020. And a lot has changed since that time.
Yeah, it's like full circle, yeah.
Yes. And I was looking back in our emails and discovered, I think you had sent me an email reaching out sometime late spring of this year and saying something about transfer news or transfer information, or you were working your angles. And then in September, you sent me this amazing email that contained a link to your new book. So we have so much to cover, but I want to start at the beginning. A little bit about, where you came from. Tell me, you were born in England. Tell me more.
So yeah, born in England. I went to school out there up until about maybe 2006. That's when we moved from England to America. Parent divorce, so that kind of prompted that. But my mom always wanted to live in America, so that was always her plan. So she got to live out that dream, which prompted my life, my start. So that's how we moved to America, and then moved around a bit, and then settled in Springfield, and then pretty much that was when I started shooting. Once I got to Springfield.
So how old were you in 2006? How old were you then?
6.
6 years old. Oh, 6 years old. Okay.
My age goes by the years.
Okay. I know you're 22 now. I was trying to do the quick math.
Yeah.
So what impact did that have on you, that move?
It was, I think it fully, it helped me be more cultured with like different backgrounds. Being from England and America, I kind of understand how it is to live there and then live here. So I like it because it's multicultural. I get different backgrounds, and it helps me with my perspective as a photographer.
Yeah. So you have family here in Springfield, right? And I get the impression that you're really close to your family.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So you're living here with your mom, your stepfather, you have brothers, but you also have family still in England, right?
Yeah,
Right. So you have a father, you have a stepmother, and a sister
yeah.
in England. Um, so that I agree. I think that must give you a really unique perspective, because you do travel back and forth. When it comes to, your art life or your photography life, and I intersperse art and photography, or artist and photographer, all the time, and I think you really embody that. Like, I don't see you as just one thing or another. I see you as a really super creative person. um but what can you describe, like, a first memory of seeing art or photography in your life?
Yeah, the first memory of seeing photography is when I was in California.
Mhm.
My family friend, she would shoot our family portraits. So that was like my first step into
Mhm.
seeing photography or being a photographer.
Mhm.
And that pretty much prompted my interest in it once
Mhm.
we moved, because I picked up a point and shoot, and that was when I just started shooting.
Mhm. Mhm. I'm gonna look, let's share a couple of images as just a backdrop to this conversation, because when we're talking about family, your brother's featured in, in much of your work, particularly during the quarantine. But I imagine they were probably in your photo shoots when you were 12 as well.
Yes.
Maybe not willingly, but it's always good to have models available, right? Can you talk about working with your family, in terms of, you know, being a creative person, and like how they maybe have helped support you as a young artist?
Yeah, I will say during the pandemic, that was like kind of the only people I could work with because we were at home and you couldn't really outsource maybe models or anything like that. So I worked with what I had, and that came out with a better result because it's people I was close with, and it just made the pictures feel more sincere and genuine.
Mhm, mhm. I think that really comes through too, because your portrayals are really beautiful. You're celebrating them, although you don't necessarily say, like, oh, this is brother number one, brother number two, brother, but they're very beautiful, beautifully lit, beautifully conceived. Can you talk a little bit about, and I know it varies, from quarantine to fashion, but do you, when you're thinking about doing a photo shoot, do you sketch ahead of time, or what kind of preparation do you do?
Um, I don't sketch because I'm not that best of a drawer, but when I'm thinking of doing a photo shoot, usually I'll see the idea in my head, or like I'll see a garment that prompts the idea. So usually I'll just go and outsource like different images from other photographers, and then um, look for kind of what I was looking to do with that, and then make a collage, mood board, and write what I want to do in that mood board, and then that's how it comes to life.
Mhm. And then you're working with your models, in this case, your brothers. And in this next example, we have, so you're describing to them then what they're going to get themselves into, or do they already know ahead of time?
Well, with these shoots, just I didn't actually have to create a mood board. These were most of the quarantine images were just like ideas I just thought of and just did in the moment, which
Mhm.
isn't usually like me. I like to plan out the shoots, but
Mhm.
during this time, I just kind of just did it, saw it, and did it. So like with this picture, um, I saw the water gallon jug,
Mm.
and then cut it and then put it over his head, and then that's how we shot the picture. So
Yeah.
that was more spontaneous.
Mhm. Mhm. Well, it's such a beautiful portrait, because as a viewer, you don't necessarily know what you're seeing, right? I mean, when you describe a water jug, and I'm like, oh my God, that's what that is. it's almost like you're tricking the viewer, right? Like, because it's so beautiful, the color, that beautiful blue, the highlight on the face, the eyes coming through in two different levels, and it's really cropped very closely. So we're really just getting like, you know, face, eyes, nose, lips, and then this veil. And then the veil turns out to be a water bottle. And it's just like, oh my God. It's really beautiful. Let's look at another one. This is another one that came out of the quarantine.
Yes, another quarantine.
This one was one that you turned in for Art 150, the Places assignment. Can you describe how this picture came about?
Yeah, this picture first came about. I was actually in bed at the time when I came up with the idea for this picture. So it's very fitting. But I saw on Instagram, I was just scrolling through Instagram and I saw the photographer Morales. He's a fashion photographer. He's shot lots of like celebrities and magazines. And he was doing a challenge, or like kind of like an invite to creatives to create a piece on quarantine in the Renaissance era. So my idea was, after I saw that, I'm like, okay, I have to do this. So my idea was to use veils and then use the lighting from the window and I put a veil on the back of the window, and then I threw a veil in the air, and then there's also fog covering the camera. So that's why it looks like a little distorted. And yeah, I just wanted to represent like a lot of the fabrics that were around during the Renaissance era, and then the chaoticness of quarantine and isolation.
And then, but you used yourself in this case.
Yeah.
Yeah. When did you start putting your own body in front of the camera? Is that something you've always done? Have you always been into self-portraits, or is that something that you find yourself doing more of these days?
I guess I find myself doing it more these days. I definitely have to build up the confidence to do that. I wouldn't always just shoot self-portraits, or if I did shoot self-portraits, it was more hiding my face or hiding myself with like dark shadows, so you couldn't really see how I looked, or like, yeah, that's how most of my self-portraits were. But over time, I got more confidence to, put myself out there and shoot myself with the way and emulate what I wanted to say with the picture.
You mentioned the, was it a contest for Vogue or Vanity Fair? What was that?
So yeah, the contest that Morales did, he accepted the picture that I sent to him, and a few other people. Like I know, I think Marc Jacobs also sent in a picture, which is funny because like he's like a really big name who also participated in the contest thing. So he accepted that, and then one of the writers for Vogue published what Morales was doing, and then put it on Vogue, and then they did a whole article. So that was, and then I saw that like a few months after. I didn't even know they did that until I just came across it, and then I was really excited because I know, just published on Vogue. I was like, wow.
You were in it, right? Like your picture was in it, and your name, photography by, right? Yeah, that must have been quite a thrill. But what is it like when you see your work, at that level? I mean, you have seen your work in a gallery, you've seen your work maybe in print, but then, to come out of quarantine and have your work on an even higher platform.
Yeah, it was unreal because it felt like I've been working towards something for a long time, and then finally like a bit of notoriety in terms of what I've been doing. It just felt like a stamp of approval, or like you're in the right direction type of.
Yeah, definitely. This is another example of your work. Where is this shot? Where was this one shot?
This was also shot during quarantine in my backyard. So This time I was just shooting with a lot of fabrics.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed using fabrics for backdrops or just garments. So, and then we had the daffodils. I think that's what those are called. Dandelions.
Dandelions. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes,
They
yes,
kind of look just like the background. So
yeah,
that was just spontaneous that we just used.
yeah. And I believe you told me that you started an online clothing line, like a clothing line online during the pandemic. Tell me more about that adventure.
Yeah, I started, it wasn't technically a clothing line, but I started an online clothing store
Okay,
where I
clothing store, sorry.
resold vintage clothing
Mhm.
that I thrifted or would find at vintage stores. And I just I did rework some of them, like maybe do a design on it. And then I would publish them in different collections. So like we had a 70s collection, we had a Browns collection, just on like brown clothing and that color scheme. And then I did a vampire collection, which is fun. Yeah, but it felt like my clothing because I was doing all these different things. But yeah,
Right,
it was really
right,
fun.
right, right. Well, I mean, that's the thing. When I think about your work, I think about like all these different aspects that you do. You're the photographer, you're the stylist, you're the art director, you're you're the entrepreneur. How do you juggle all these things at the same time?
Um, I mean, when I'm doing shoots and I'm having to do the styling, the art directing, and the photography, and just coming with all these different things, I didn't realize that it was something that not a lot of people did because now you hire people for those parts.
Mhm.
So doing them, it just felt a little normal. I was like, okay, I just do this, do that, get all the clothes,
Yeah.
you know. But so I've just been doing it, and I felt normal. And
Yeah, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work to do to manage all of those moving parts. Let's look at another picture. This is a Richard Avedon, because you've said many times that he was an inspiration. Richard Avedon was a very famous fashion photographer, breaking a lot of rules, both within photography and how to take pictures of fashion back in the day. But I thought of this example when thinking about your work. Sadly, your grandfather died during the pandemic in Jamaica. But you decided you were going to go, but that you were also going to bring your camera, and you worked on a series. Can you tell me a little bit more about the Faces of Jamaica series?
yeah, so I came up with the idea to do the Faces of Jamaica series at his funeral because I wanted to represent him in a way. I didn't, that was the first time I got to meet him.
Mm.
So we never had a conversation before, but I know I wanted to represent him and his country, especially that was my first time there.
Yeah.
And the only way I know how to do that is through photography. So I knew I had to, you know, get in contact with the people and represent them. So,
Mhm.
and I remember how Richard Avedon does that through his portraits, and that inspired how I went about the Faces of Jamaica series.
Yeah, yeah. How did you find subjects when you were in Jamaica? Were you just like randomly walking around and meeting people, or did you already have contacts? Being that it was the first time you'd ever been there.
Yeah, I did. I really, yeah, just walked around and met people. I brought a sheet. So we had a white sheet. That's how we got the white background.
Yeah.
And I would have my brothers or my dad, they would just hold it. And
Mhm.
then I would go up to the people, explain what I was doing. And then pretty much almost everyone was like really happy to do it. So that's
Yeah,
how I got all the pictures.
yeah, yeah. It's a really beautiful series. And I imagine, I mean, it's part of your book, which we can't forget about. This amazing book called
Thank you.
Ascension, which is broken up into four sections, I guess, four stages, right? Starts with quarantine and but it's covering the years 2020 to 2022. Um, the next section of the book is the Black Lives Matter, right? Because not only was the pandemic going on, we're in quarantine, you're having a death in the family, but there, at that time there were protests across the country for months, and you were recording some of that, right, with your camera. Can you talk about what you were wanting to do when you were recording some of the protests?
Yeah, so when I would go to the protests, I wanted to just document history and social history, because that was a time that was really hard for a lot of us. And it was the first time I had been to a protest,
Mm.
and I wanted to capture everyone's emotions and just the message that we were preaching.
Mhm.
And that's also what inspired this shoot that I did.
Because I think I read somewhere that you wrote, that there was a lot of anger. You had a lot of anger and you had a lot of pain during that time, and that some of the going to the protest, recording the protest, using photography as a means of trying to deal with that anger and pain maybe helped to get through that period.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
It definitely helped.
yeah. I have a I every interview always presents an opportunity for me to learn more, and I always do a little bit of research depending on how much time I have, but to try to because I do feel like we're all connected. But I found this this is a book. This is a portrait of Avedon, Richard Avedon, and James Baldwin. And they
Wow.
did, yeah, which I had never heard of before. Um, it's called Nothing Personal. And it came out in the 1960s. But I discovered a reissue, and this is a reissue from 2017. With an essay by a wonderful writer, Hilton Als, who you've probably heard of. But I wanted to read this very short quote because when I started reading this, I immediately thought of your work. So this is Hilton Als. Art, the best of it, should be a form of activism. If we define activism as, quote, doctrine or practice that emphasizes direct, vigorous action, Webster's. And what is thought or thinking but a direct, vigorous action in response to another thought or experience? That's the question that he starts his essay with. And it goes on. It has these beautiful, there's a self-portrait with Avedon and Baldwin.
Wow.
Um, yeah, and it goes through their process of working on this together. It has letters from March 30th, 1963, contact sheets, and then even the mock-ups of the book, which also made me think of you, and just the process of book making, right? And how you put images with text, which you did so beautifully in this, because each section seems really deliberate and um uh where's the it was just here, yeah, and so there's the image and
Yeah.
yeah, and it's just very, very powerful, Kimani, your book,
Thank you.
which the library is the Stick Library is going to have a copy available for people to take out, but I
Wow.
just wanted to note that because it's just a really interesting, I love making those connections, and I know how important other photographers and other artists are to you. So, and writers too. Let's look at another example. Oh, this is another, yeah, this is another one from 2020, correct? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, we're going to get to the Dwayne Michaels. He's another influence. This is Dwayne Michaels' self-portrait as if I were dead from 1970. And you did an inspired version of this very, very well, really beautifully. Can you talk about this image?
Yeah, this image, it was actually for an assignment
Mhm,
um, while I was at STIC.
mhm.
The assignment was to make a photograph based on the word decay. So you just
Mm,
take that wherever you want it. And then I had trouble thinking of what to do. And then I saw Dwayne Michael's piece, and that inspired me to shoot this.
yeah, yeah.
So,
What
yeah.
impact did it have on you going to community college?
It definitely helped me take a break and pause and think about what I really want to do and who I want to be
Mhm.
before taking that big leap into moving like I wanted to do. Obviously, we all want to go out there and do what we want to do,
Yeah,
but going to community college helps you financially, and then it also helps you take a step back and think about where you want to be and who you want to be. And then that break helped me, develop my work as well
yeah, yeah,
and be able to move later on, fully realized as a person, knowing what I want to do. So that helped.
yeah. You said though that um in 2020 you had some disappointments, some real disappointments in terms of you really wanted to go to university in London, so you wanted to go back to England, and that didn't work out. Um, what was that time like?
It was a hard time because once I have an idea set on something, I don't really think about anything else. Like I never thought about New York. I didn't think I would be going there or moving there. It wasn't an option for me. I'm like, oh no, I'm going to London. I'm going back there. I'm going to do this and that. And once it didn't work out, it's like, okay, what do I do now?
Mm,
This Nothing's working out for me, but it all was part of the plan and it all worked out. So it's just really the message of like timing is everything. And sometimes if something doesn't work out, then it's just not meant for that time.
yeah,
And we're going to revisit it later on, or you need to rework your route and maybe it's somewhere else out there for you.
right, right. Where do you feel like you get that? Where do you get that from? That sort of self-determination or um what's another word for it? It really is like a self-determination. I mean, do you consider yourself to be a stubborn person or like I love when you say like, once I get something in my head, and I want to do something, then I'm going to do it. But in this case, you really had to pivot. You really had to think about, and it was during the pandemic, which makes it probably even harder to manage. But what is it? Where do you think you get that from?
Um, I would say my mom, she's the one who inspired me to make this book, and she's really driven in terms of having her own lane, career, business, and just progressing from there. So not settling for just, I know, like probably any job that if you're doing a job that maybe you're not too excited about, not settling for that, and also having something that you can do on the side that makes you happy.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I admire your ability to persevere. I've told you this many times. I really do. Um, but you were a bank teller.
Yeah.
What was that like? What is it like being a bank teller?
It was interesting. That was the first job I got after high school.
Mhm.
Um, I just went there one day, and then the manager was like, "Oh, you should work here," and I'm like, "Okay." And then that's how it worked out. And then I worked there for a few years. It definitely gave me a lot of business skills, and then um, financial literacy, which is something they don't teach as well in school. So that helped. And it also is like a contrast to being an artist, but also, you know, being, just more side of that thing,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
being an artist, but also juggling it with being uh, a worker, and
yeah, yeah.
yeah, kept me grounded.
That's good. Well, it sounds like your family's kept you grounded. The work has kept you grounded, and that you were able to use, so you graduated, we should say you graduated from STCC during the pandemic, May of 2020. And so you think you're going to go to London and then that doesn't happen. You end up not going back to school right away. But you're working, you know, you have a job. I know during that time, you know, there was a lot going on. People were losing work, or, you know, just so many things, people being laid off and such, early, you know, in those early days. And, you know, but you held on. You really did. I mean, you did more than hold on. When did you think about making the book? When did that come up?
This happened maybe like 3 months ago. So before I moved to New York, my mom looked at, well, she's always been telling me that for a few months. And I was just like, no, like I don't have a book. I don't have work enough for the book. It's not the right time.
Yeah.
But she did sit me down. We looked through all the work, and
Mhm.
that's where I saw these different stages of my life that could be a book, and it could be inspiring to other people who are artists or just anyone who wants to get out there and, follow their dreams.
Right, right. No, I mean, I think it's an amazing thing to like use a disappointment, use a setback as a stool to
Yeah.
see something differently and to propel you to do more. And I feel like you've done that, you know, like you've really used your time, you know, not in school, in between graduation and transfer, to, you know, really like even further your artistic endeavors, you know, because of all the work that you did outside of school, you know. And that's the true sign, right, of an artist, is when you don't have an assignment, what are you doing, you know? And
Right, right.
you've done a lot. Yeah. Here's another really great triptych of your work. Can you describe a little bit of what you were thinking in shooting this?
Yeah. This was again inspired by a lot of fabric,
Mhm.
and I pretty much styled, yeah, I styled each one of them. It's called Satin Dreams. So I use the satin fabric, and then I wrapped the fabric around her, and then I had those different outfits for the guys, and I just wanted to represent like a goddess, mother figure, like a just represent uh like femininity in a woman, and
Mhm.
then these two guys who are like following her lead.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I love that you have um it looks like a woman's top on top of one of the men, right? And then the illusion that you're able to create what appears to be a quote unquote dress, but you said it's just a piece of satin fabric that you're able to just wrap around, you know. Um, what you know, when you think about fashion, is that something that you want to go into more, or do you feel like it's photography, or how do you like, can you do both? I mean, you did both in this for sure, but like moving forward, like, do you want to be known for designing fashion, or do you want to be known for the images that you take of fashion?
I like what that quote you read, because it's something I've been thinking about, is just representing my work with what I have to say. And because in my head, I feel like every image has already been done,
Mm,
every picture is taken. There's no original ideas. The
mhm.
way to make an idea yours is by telling your own story and just putting that into something that has already been done. So for me, that's through fashion, it's through social justice, it's through working all these things and what you want to say to society, and what you just the message you want to put out there, and putting that into fashion
Yeah.
and the work that you create.
Mhm.
And in terms of fashion designing, I people have brought that up to me. And maybe it's out there in the future. I haven't like indulged it yet, but it'd be
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. So we keep making this reference to New York, but we should be very specific. You're at the Parsons School for Art, in the BFA program, right? In photography. What has that been like? What has it is a huge transition from Springfield, Massachusetts to, you're living in New York City now. How has your first month and a half been?
It's been great. Met a lot of new people, starting a lot of new projects, learning different things that I didn't think I'd be learning. So yeah, it's been good. And then I've also had an opportunity to share like my book with other students here and then get their feedback and then, be able to share that with them is awesome too.
Yeah, yeah. Let's look at another example of your work. This one. I mean, people who want to follow you or see more of your work can find you on TikTok. They can find you on Instagram. Your book can be purchased online through your website. And one of the things as I was preparing for this interview, I was thinking about that I really enjoy, and I didn't find it until much later, are those little videos
Mhm.
of you in process. Can you tell me how do you make those little, what are they called? Reels? What are they called?
Yeah, I do make like different TikToks and videos of the behind the scenes. I
Yeah.
started during like quarantine.
Mhm.
Um, I think it's another way to express yourself as an artist. It's just showing the behind the scenes, what it takes to create what you're creating, and then showing the final result.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on. Do you set up so you have to have two cameras, right? You have the one that's making the video, and then you have the other one that's actually taking the still picture, right? Are you operating all this by yourself when you're doing self-portraits, or do you have, are your brothers or friends in the wings helping out? How does that work? What's a typical photo shoot with Kimani?
If I'm doing a self-portrait, pretty much I'm doing everything. So a lot of the self-portraits I didn't even have a studio or anything like that. I just did it in my bedroom and I just had to set up my phone and then camera, and then I would go back and forth shooting it myself. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's great. I love seeing that. I mean, there's one and all these, and then of course you have all these still images of the process as well, where I think you're stenciling something onto your head. Like it looks like you're spraying red. It was
Oh
for,
yeah, that was
yeah.
Valentine's. It's like red hearts. Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. I was just like, oh my God. And you have created this illusion, Kimani, of something being very easy and very, and then in fact, it's not that easy what you're doing. And this, I remember seeing this, this is a series of self-portraits that you did. This is on the cover of the book. And I think you have this, is this satin? This
Yeah,
coral?
satin.
Yeah. And it looks like it's windy. And
Oh, it
like the
was.
wind, and the satin is billowing in the wind, and you're sitting there like you're not moving, you're like, you're gonna get through this. How many shots are you taking just to get this one image?
Oh, a lot. It definitely maybe usually I'm shooting for maybe 3 hours,
Yeah.
something like that. Around then takes a lot but it's all worth it when you get that one. It's always that one picture.
There's always that one. Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's really beautiful. In your book, you said 2020 was one of the most important years of our lives. For better or for worse, everything changed and we changed with it. Um, I certainly think that you have taken what was a very challenging time and made the most of it. It's really inspirational. And it's just such a wonderful, um, it was just so good to hear from you again. And how great to then see you in New York this past weekend when we went to ICP and just sat in the lobby and and got to catch up. And it's really wonderful to see how well you're doing. And I hope, I'm going to go to the last slide. This is how people can find you among other platforms as well. But if people want to find your book, if people want to find the reels that we're talking about, or anything else about you, they can find you at Parsons for the next year and a half or two.
Yeah.
Working away. But I really hope that you keep in touch, and I can't wait to see what you do next. And yeah, it's really been a thrill to be able to share your work in this way. And I thank you, Kimani, for sharing your time and your talent, because it really is truly inspirational.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And for organizing this.
You're welcome. You're welcome. It's really my pleasure. And I really do mean it when I say keep in touch.
Of course.
Okay. Well, I guess that's it for another edition of Carberry Conversations, and we will be back in 2023. Thank you.